Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
Oh my God, you're back.
Yay! I haven't left you all. Really, I haven't.
There was a lot of speculation that you'd never be on the show ever again.
Yeah, I had some emails and some texts that came through going, what the heck? And I'm terribly sorry, guys. It just didn't work out, and it's been a really crazy winter at my house. My mother was in the hospital from Thanksgiving until Christmas, and then it kind of just went downhill from there. She is fine, but it's really been a long winter, and I'm so glad to be back.
I'm glad you're back, too. Now, we talked about the fact that some weeks it's very hard to get guests, and we decided, Elizabeth and I, that we're not going to let Hollywood dictate whether we can have a show or not.
Yeah.
But we can ask Elizabeth to turn off her phone. That would be...
Which it is. So I'm surprised
well,
it made that noise.
It just beeped at me. So we're not going to let anybody, any agents or managers dictate whether or not we tape a podcast, whether they put a guest on or not. So we are going to launch into something next week, you and me.
Yes.
Where we're just going to talk about some entertainment highlights that have gone on in the celebrity world. Give our take on it, because, you know, that's what a lot of podcasts are, is just people talking, and they're wildly popular.
I know.
And we've gotten good comments about our banter and just the fact that people like listening to the interaction.
Right.
So we'll go with it.
Okay.
So we'll do that next week. Now, Elizabeth, you weren't here for this interview, but how did you ever watch the new Leave It To Beaver?
I have recollections of watching it, but I don't remember a whole lot about it. I know that I liked Leave It To Beaver, so I feel like I would have watched the new Leave It To Beaver.
Well, we are the one podcast, the only show that's been reuniting the whole entire cast at different times, of course.
Yes.
But over the course of our show. So we've had Tony Dow and Jerry Mathers.
Yep.
We had Janice Kent, who played Tony Dow's wife on the new show. We had Kipp Marcus last week. We're going to finish with him this week. We're working on John Snee and Kalina Kiff, the other two kids on the show. Troy Davidson is in my network, so I'm going to see if I can get him on the show. He played the little brother of Tony Dow's son. Yeah. The little brother Kelly, that's the name I was looking for. But I want you to be here when we get the Osmonds. So when we have Ken Osmond and Eric and Christian, I want you to be here for that.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
So we're going to work on getting those reunions set up and get everybody on the show, and we'll continue to do that as we progress through the year.
Yeah.
All right, so let's finish up this week. We had Kipp Marcus last week. He was in New York visiting, Broadway and stuff for his kid's birthday. And he's from Luxembourg. It was really nice that we didn't have to work around that 7-hour time difference to do an interview.
Yeah.
And let's continue now. Here's part 2 with Kipp Marcus, who played Kip Cleaver on the new Leave It To Beaver.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the Podfix Network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours. If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom. Can I take a picture? Oh, my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Yeah, I found it very coincidental that, Corey Feldman and yourself both had your own names as your character names.
Yeah, well, they really liked the alliteration. So they liked the alliteration of both Corey Cleaver and Kipp Cleaver. I think that was one of the things they dug. The sort of the sound of the name sounded good, which probably right. And then they were also thinking of just sort of like, it's really easy and it's easy to remember. And mine, I think both of our names were somewhat unique. I didn't know any kids named Corey at the time, and certainly I never knew a Kipp.
You have a Kipp in a bottle like on the street, man. What's that?
Well, of course, the only Kipp that I knew growing up was Tom Hanks in Bosom Buddies. And that was with one P. My name was uniquely spelled with two, but my character was one exactly. Yeah. So and I guess I always think myself. I'm always grateful for the fact that I'm glad I was the Kipp, because it was fun getting to do the show for as many years as I was able to, to kind of really, really be in the family. That was special, because I think a lot of people, the movie was very well viewed, but it was erased rather quickly when the show happened. You didn't get any questions growing up about Corey. It's kind of interesting. We were able to quickly kind of pivot to our story, which is really the brilliance, I think, of the writing team, and kind of just getting into the real show. The movie was a bit of a downer. I mean, it was kind of depressing, and you're dealing with a lot of heavy stuff. And the show, while it definitely had its little moments like that, it tried to stay on sort of lighter side of childhood, dealing with the anxiety that kids have, which is like, oh no, I just spilled paint, or I'm going to get in trouble. I mean, most of the things are really about that complex, but it's really how kids deal with real situations, which are for them terrifying, and yet for a parent, you just kind of chuckle and go like, I can't believe my kid's really freaked out about this. But childhood's hard, right? It's hard, and it's full of anxiety. And so these shows, which there aren't many today, right? I mean, Malcolm in the Middle was obviously a great one at, I think, doing this as well, but there aren't that many shows today that really capture, and the Wonder Years was brilliant at doing it. But if you think of the last 15, 20 years, like my kids, they watch like some of the Amazon shows like Gordimer. They really like that. But there's not a lot. There's not a lot for 10-year-olds like to gravitate to. That's really, it's sort of a lost genre.
Yeah, it is. It is, unfortunately. In the one episode where you come home late, and the beaver gets mad at you because you're late, and he gives you a feel of you're like, well, I'm 17 years old. Why do we need to see you? And of course, he gives the classic line, well, you understand one day when you have kids of your own.
Kids of your own. Exactly.
So did you know? I mean, your kid was Lee Phoenix, which is Joaquin Phoenix, who just played the Joker. I mean, you ever like look at this stuff and like, he was my son 30 years ago.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, when you asked, actually, when you asked the question earlier about how do your kids feel about you doing this, when they learned that I basically parented Joaquin Phoenix, the Joker, in an episode of Leave It To Beaver, I did take on a new status.
Nice.
It was actually very, very funny. The interesting thing is Joaquin was like one of the sweetest kids. He was only a couple years younger than me, but when you're I think I was maybe 17 at the time, and he was probably, I don't know, 13. He like, it's a big difference, right, at that age. And he was much more of a kid. That family was so sweet. Summer and Leaf were like the best behaved, ready to work kids. And he was a rock star then. I mean, like, you knew it, doing just these scenes down in, I think we're in Orlando, because he was also doing Parenthood.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which, he was brilliant in. And we were all down there filming, and you knew it. You knew this kid had just something. But, we had these people, like I was saying, I mean, Jack Black beat me up in the show. I mean, like, my kids freaking love that. They're like, the School of Rock dude, like, bullied you? Okay, you're cool. I mean, it's hysterical what makes you cool, but I'll take it.
Castmate Kalina Kiff was on The Tonight Show on a couple of times with Johnny Carson.
Yes, she
when
was.
Those kind of things happen, do you get jealous at that point that she had the opportunity and you hadn't gotten that? And I mean, that's a big deal to be on The Tonight Show.
Kalina had already built up quite a reputation with Johnny. So she had done The Tonight Show back when she was working with Tony Randall on Love, Sydney. And he adored her. And you could tell why. when she went on that show, she was so funny, and she was just a little girl when she was on Love Sydney. I mean, really a little girl. And Johnny Carson just ate it up. The conversations they would have were hysterical. And so I remember that my sort of interest in, kind of everything, I loved the business of all this. I loved, like, the whole kind of machinery. And so Kalina being on that, I wasn't a stage kid. I wasn't this person who was like, oh, gee, I want that.
Okay.
I was more fascinated by it, and I was fascinated that she was doing it, and she was brilliant at it. She was asked back again and again, and to be asked back again and again on Johnny's show was a big deal. And so I knew that he was a god to me. And I did hysterical. I remember going on. Did you guys ever see this is a very New York show, but he was famous in New York. Have you ever heard of a guy named Joe Franklin?
I have not.
Okay, Google him because you will laugh. Okay, so you could probably somehow find it, but Tony Dow and I did an interview. We were in New York for a bunch of interviews, and by the way, I was the one that was doing all the like Tiger Beat and Teen Beat magazines, and of course Kalina wasn't doing those things. We were all doing, things that were appropriate for us. I wasn't going to be the cute little kid who said wacky things on the Tonight Show, and I knew that. Like from a business standpoint, like what is Johnny going to talk to me about? But having Kalina on talking about like going horseback riding, they would end up in these hysterical conversations. But Tony and I went on this show, the Joe Franklin Show, which is a very famous show in New York, and we laughed so hard. This guy was an old timer. He had interviewed everybody, and I remember asking him on the show what was the secret to his success. And his answer, because he'd been like on television for like 50 years, and his answer was hysterical and also very true. He said, "Well, kid, you don't peak too soon." And I mean, it was actually true. He had never become huge, but he had always been famous.
Wow. And
he kind of rode along. So we all had these wacky, experiences. I remember cutting the ribbon. I think the boardwalk for baseball thing in Orlando. We did these crazy, we were opening up like baseball fields and studios, and I got the key. I think I got the key. I was like the mayor of Universal City at one point. I mean, like we got these crazy honors. Like we didn't know what was going on. I mean, it's hysterical stuff. Here's the key to the city. We were like, okay.
So what does that get you? Does that like?
It doesn't get you anything. It just seems really cool at the time.
Can you imagine if you go down to Universal now and be like, "Yeah, I'm the mayor of Universal. You got to let us in for free."
It's kind of cool because I think I was like the mayor of Munchkin City in the Wizard of Oz once. When I was 11. So it's kind of nice.
Did you hear the whole Brian Levant interview?
If I didn't hear all of it, I definitely heard a lot of it.
All right. Did you hear the part?
I haven't spoken to Brian in a little while, and it was like so nice to hear. It was almost like I was with him. So I really, sitting in Luxembourg, because we live in Europe, and it was just a really nice thing to kind of hear him and kind of sit back and be like, there's Brian.
Well, I want to ask the tippy toe question. So did you hear the part where he talked about when you lived with him?
Well,
here we go.
Are you talking about his reference to poor Shannen Doherty?
Yes, we have to ask about that.
It's so bad. First of all, he, there's something that happens when you are, 16, and all of these guys who write for you have this vicarious fantasy about your life and versus your actual life. And the truth of the matter is, Shannen was a sweetheart. Her mom was a sweetheart, and I'm rooting for her in everything that she is going through right now in her life, because she's not well. But none of that happened. So that his story was a fantasy. Now, were there stories of girls calling the house when I was living at Brian's? Yes. Did Al pick up the phone and basically Al is Brian's wife, who was my second mom, and basically tell off these girls because she was not allowing me to go out? Yes. Those things did happen. They were some of those were actresses on the show, but in general, like I said, I happened to have an extraordinary list of co-stars over the years, but I can say with full humility that I had the same girlfriend I was like Wally in many ways. I had the same girlfriend throughout high school, and that was my story. And so I could have been fortunate enough to have maybe some girlfriends in high school that were famous TV actresses. However, I opted out of that world and stuck with my Mayfield and had that experience. But it did always make me laugh because I knew Brian and the writers were always talking about because Al was fending off some interesting phone calls late at night, and there were a few stalkery moments where she would say, "You're going to leave Kipp alone." It's just like, oh my God. It was very, very funny, but not Shannen.
Okay.
There was never a pool table and any actress.
I appreciate you kindly addressing
always
that.
Enjoy a good Brian O'Vance story.
Absolutely.
Written or spoken.
Yeah, and again, this is the thing. I mean, Brian is he's one of the funniest people on the planet, and whenever I would write something after I was done with the show and I wanted someone to look at it, just tell me is this landing? Is this funny? You would go to Brian. I mean, he knew how to construct a joke, to set up a situation, and he's just funny. He just is naturally funny in that way, and so he could coach you and turn something which was like, okay, that's working pretty well, and make it a whole event, and that was his genius. So he had an avid imagination.
I've been kind of collecting Heather O'Rourke's stories. She was on 2 episodes of the new Leave It To Beaver.
Yep.
Did you have any stories that you could share with us?
Outside of the fact that I thought she was one of the most adorable little girls on the planet, and her untimely death rocked our set. Outside of that, my memory of her was just always that, I think we wanted her to be on the show whenever she could be on the show. She was absolutely precocious and precious, and obviously once Poltergeist, I mean, she was a legend. And again, the shock of her loss was it was madness. It was madness. But I didn't, remember that she was maybe 4 or 5 years younger than me. So she was a real baby for me. So the little kids, obviously, I mean, I mentored Johnny and stuff like that and Kalina, but I didn't really spend much time with the littles. But again, another example of just a huge talent.
So now, a few weeks ago, we spoke to Janice Kent.
Yeah.
And she had mentioned that you two were really close in filming of the show. Do you guys still, I know you guys are half a world away, so it doesn't happen very often, I imagine, but are you in touch today?
Definitely. I think I just posted on a Facebook message to her to get her butt to Luxembourg and visit with our family. Janice, I adore Janice. She's, first of all, she was and is immensely talented. She was, one of these people, like, you were so lucky to have her on the show because she, like me, came from the East Coast. She was a bit of an outsider to the whole sort of Beaver experience, and we both kind of gravitated to each other and had hysterical moments of, like, I think, alignment on funny things that would occur on the set, and also just a great friendship. We both love the arts, and in general, we both came from the theater. She was at my wedding, she was at my movie premiere for the movie that I wrote and produced when we were out in LA for the American Film Institute. She's just always been there. It's kind of, again, extended family. And so I would put her in the inner circle for me, and always to be, and just rock star talent, and also rock star coach. So she kind of also, beyond just being so talented, is a really great acting coach, and taught a ton of young adults. And she just has the right skills for that, the right patience and the love. She's a real love for it. She's awesome. Like Tony too. These are just salt of the earth people. I remember going, to over to Tony and his wife's house and doing sleepovers with his son, Tony's son, at the time, and hanging with Tony and going to the beach in Malibu, and these were seminal moments. These were really, Tony and Janice were kind of, I didn't really know Jerry well, you know what I mean? Jerry wasn't somebody who got to know the kids that much. And so, Tony was like the guy, like classic uncles, right? Like, he's the one you wanted to, like, spend all your time with.
The cool uncle.
Yeah, exactly. And he was. Yeah. He really was. He and really talented director and writer, and we got to do a bunch of shows together where that was always the fun thing, right? Because the writer's room, you go in and you do these read-throughs on Monday. You didn't know what you were getting, so it was my favorite day, really, because it was a real surprise. You would sit down and, you'd read an episode like, Daydreaming or I Had It All, and you'd go, okay, this is going to be fun. This is going to be, and then you knew, oh, it's 2 weeks. Okay, Tony's going to direct this one, or Brian's going to direct this one, or Bob Cleaver, or whoever. And, these were all, like, guys you wanted to work with.
So do you have any memorabilia from the show? Do you still have your Mayfield sweater?
Yeah, I do. I do. I still have my Mayfield sweater, and actually, it's sort of amazing, but my grandpa, who stayed with me, Grandpa Leonard, stayed with me in LA for one of the seasons, and he became kind of famous on the set. Everybody loves him, and he was buried in a Mayfield sweater because it was something that he really identified and loved having. They gave him one as sort of like when he finished his tour with me, and cool. He always wore it, and so when we laid him to rest, he wore a Mayfield sweater. Outside of that, I probably have some old baseball shirts from the some of our softball league and baseball league stuff that we did for the show. And I have a plaque that I think the studio gave us when we finished 100 episodes. And that, because obviously that was a very big milestone. And so I've always kept that. It's a nice thing to have.
Well, it's always been my quest to find myself one of those sweaters. I had one made that was not quite right, but one of the
colors are the colors are tough, and you have to get the M font right, and it's not easy, but it's it was. I remember the one thing I did not. I don't know what happened to it actually, but I mean that was the miss. Is that I did not somehow either keep or it was destroyed. I'm not sure, but was the leather Letterman coat. So that Letterman jacket versus the sweater. So the Letterman jacket was my favorite, and that did not survive. That was a nice coat. One of the other things that was great was that every season when I would do the show, remember, like I was growing. So pretty much when I finished the season, the wardrobe department gave me my clothes. So it was actually great. I mean, when it was a good season, I also had some really bad clothes sometimes. So, I go through and say, no, thanks. But there were a couple seasons I got really lucky, and, I'd end up with some really cool, mid-'80s, just hitting type of wardrobe and be like, okay, I'm going back to Connecticut in style. But that jacket eluded me. Sad. But anyway, on the wardrobe side now, not too much.
The list, you had the sweater that you wore in the episode, which was always a blank one, and then the whole entire cast and crew had one.
Yep.
Which said Mayfield on the chest, and the name.
Yeah,
on the chest.
You're right. Well done.
You've seen a couple of episodes there. In fact, the episode where you get beat up by Buddy Black, there's a couple of guys that are probably from the crew that are used as extras.
You're right.
And they're wearing sweaters, but you see that they got embroidery on the chest.
Yeah, it's totally not accurate, right?
Yeah.
It's really funny, actually.
So do you have the episode one with the name and without the name and stuff, or do you have the one that you had off the set? Or did you have one off the set?
I have the cast and crew. I don't have the blank.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually true. I didn't even think about that, but that is true. They're not embroidered. But the one I have is
with the 2 P's, with your own name.
With 2 P's, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I always think those little things, you see every once in a while you'll see an extra in the background. I'll look at the chest and I'll see it's a blank one. Then it's
exactly.
Then there's ones where they got writing on them, and they probably are from the crew, and they're just standing in.
In 1999, you wrote and starred in a movie that we mentioned a little bit earlier called Let It Snow, alongside a person who is now your wife, Alice Dillon. So were you guys already a couple? And I'm assuming based on your previous answers, you were. There's a reason why you guys starred as each other's love interest.
So we met after I had graduated college, and Allie was still an actress at NYU. And I pretty much, after a certain time, I wrote the picture for her and sort of styled it to her sort of comedic, and a lot of the meet cute stuff was definitely meet cute stuff from our relationship. And when I started to raise the money for the film and we started doing readings, Allie started doing the readings, and people just pretty much fell in love with her. And, all the investors were like, I hope this is the star of the film. And so it was actually rather easy to make the decision to have her star in it. The truth of the matter is that the harder part was that we needed to get a name. Mm-hmm. And because there was a bit of a contingency in our investor group to have somebody of some significance play a big role. And so I had a connection to Bernadette Peters. And Bernadette, this is back in 99, so 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And Bernadette at the time was starring in a bunch of Broadway shows, and the person I knew who knew her, I had I had done Les Miserables with, which I'd done on Broadway after I graduated from college, and he was the executive producer. And so I reached out to him and said, "Hey, I have a script. It's called, at the time it was called Snow Days," and I said, "I'd really love to get this to Bernadette." So he said to me, "Okay, I'm going to give you her fax number, but use your judgment." And of course, in my judgment, it seemed perfectly reasonable to fax her the entire script.
Uh-huh.
Now, I later learned that she had one of those old fax machines that had the scrolls.
Oh, no.
And so basically, she got home from the Hamptons, and this 110-page screenplay was completely sprawled. It was like, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, like all over her floors of her apartment in Upper Manhattan. And she walked into the house and was like, "What the heck is going on?" So she read through the script. I was scouting locations in New York for the film, and I get this phone call, and it's Bernadette. I mean, she literally called me. Bernadette was a bit of a legend for me, also seminal, like The Jerk, all these movies growing up, Pennies from Heaven. And she said, "It's Bernadette Peters, and I want to meet you." And I went to her penthouse to kind of talk through the script with her. And again, this is like a goddess of both Broadway and film. And I arrived at her place, and I'm not great with dogs. I'm not very like comfortable. Like if you have like a big dog and they like run at me, I'm like, okay, like I don't.
Well, Frozen,
she had
yeah.
this like humongous dog, and the dog like barreled out of her apartment and jumped on me. Like it was not like the right start to the author and the actress sort of scene. And but I kept my cool. I was like, "Nice dog," like trying to act like I knew what to do with the dog, And so anyway, we went into her apartment and we had this crazy conversation. And at some point, she said, "We're going to make your movie." And I remember thinking like I won the lottery, but I also knew that she was an actress and that her agent would probably say no. And so even though she was saying yes, that didn't mean that it was a done deal. And so at the time, I just said to her, "Look, Bernadette, you're saying yes to me today on a Sunday afternoon, but tomorrow when I talk to William Morris, it's going to be no." And she said, "I call the shots, and it's going to be yes."
Wow.
And the next day, her agent called me, and he said, he got on the phone. I always imagined her agent as drinking like mint juleps. He had this this very southern accent, and he sounded like he was out of a Tennessee Williams play, and he was like, "Miss Bernadette doesn't work for $50 a day," and it was it was a SAG low budget contract. It was like this crazy low budget contract. And I said, "Well, Miss Bernadette said she's doing the movie, so you might want to talk to your client."
Ooh.
And within 24 hours, we had a letter of intent, and we were making a movie with Bernadette Peters. And so Alice Dillon got to star in the movie, and I was never challenged because we ended up having a name in Bernadette. And I brought my brother in to direct the movie, who is a really talented horror film director, but it also throughout high school, he and I had done a ton of romantic comedy plays and musicals together. And so, again, family event. So Adam directed, I produced and wrote, starred. Allie starred. Bernadette came in and played my mom. We filmed it in my house in Connecticut, and we filmed in the city, in all these places that were near and dear. I had a lot of my friends from Les Miserables in it.
How neat.
And like guys like Stephen Colbert. I mean, I actually, it's actually amazing. I was thinking about this the other day because I was looking at Brian's insane cast list. But when I look back at the Let It Snow cast list, I was like, wow, the number of people that were coming up at that time, like Colbert, that ended up in our movie. This little film that could, and got distributed in 30 countries. I mean, it was kind of amazing.
That's great. All right, finish up with this last story, because 2 weeks ago we were supposed to do an interview. In fact, Brian had come over to my house. Now he's in Florida. He came over.
God.
We're in the studio. We're waiting for Kipp Marcus to give us a call. And what do we find out? A BS line that says, my car is stuck in an elevator. And I thought, no way this is true. And then you send me the picture. So tell me what happened.
The car, basically, the elevator ate my car. So my, it was a classic. It's really a Cleaver story if you think about it. But it's Cleaver by way of 21st century and expatriates living in Luxembourg working for Amazon. My wife had gone back to Connecticut with two of our babies to spend some time with friends and family. I had the older kids, and we were all in Luxembourg, and we were coming home from going to, I think it was a birthday. Yeah, it was a birthday. It was another birthday. So I had a birthday today for my daughter.
I hope this one went better.
Frozen,
yeah.
New York. But that was, we were going to see a movie with a bunch of my son's friends in Luxembourg, and we got home, and we have this crazy Bond. It's like this James Bond elevator system. And you drive your car into this crazy Lazy Susan thing. It spins around, and then you lock it, and you walk out of it, and you swipe a key. And when you swipe the key, the car literally drops. And then it finds a spot. It drops into the floor of this ancient. I'm not kidding. This ancient sort of medieval structure. And then it finds a spot to park in. Well, anyway, it went halfway down, and then it didn't go any further. And so I had 10 cars waiting outside of this crazy facility as I stood inside this place trying to get my car not to be swallowed up by this, this stupid, robot thing. And so I ended up texting you guys I felt so bad. I'm so sorry. I was literally I know this sounds like a dog ate my homework or something, but my car literally was just eaten by a robot, and I can't get it out, and I can't leave because there's this line of cars, and everybody's hating me and speaking in Luxembourgish. And finally, I was able to get it out, but by then you guys were like, okay, this kid we're not doing this tonight. So anyway.
No,
I appreciate that we were able to reset it up. It's been super fun. Again, you guys are doing a great job, and it's great to know that there are communities like this and people talking about these shows and digitize the stuff that's being done with digitizing what can be digitized so that people can even see them.
Thank goodness for Scott Hetrick.
Yeah, Scott is he's a rock star. And it's great because kids like my sons and daughter are having a chance to look at it because I don't even have a VCR, so we've taped somewhere in some storage unit somewhere, but it's just great that there's a place online to kind of look at some of this stuff.
Were you able to get videos from did Brian get videos for you guys somehow? Or?
Yeah, back in the late '80s, we had old VHS tapes because we would request them from time to time, and then they would send us them. And at some point, I will. It's one of those classic things. You have 5 kids, the number of things you're the things that you were oh yeah, I need to do that. Taking them to a film house and just getting them digitized is a classic one. Of course, the number of bins that we have in units somewhere in the world with the number of places we have lived in our lives, God only knows where those tapes are. But they're in some unit in one of our places. And one day when I have a moment, I'll sit down and get them digitized. But for now, we have Scott. Thanks,
That's
Scott.
awesome.
And thank goodness for him, for sure.
Yeah, totally.
For sure.
Thank you, Kipp, so much for your time. We appreciate your appearance on our show.
Oh, yeah. And congratulations. I think you are the first kid from the new show that's ever done an interview in an open forum.
Well, ring the bell.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, we got to get Johnny and Eric and Kalina. I saw Kalina. She visited me in Luxembourg last year. It was really great. We had dinner together, and it was great to see her. And she's doing great.
We've been talking to her on Facebook, and she's very reluctant to do the interview. I know she's been listening to these, so hopefully maybe you can. I'm serious. Maybe you can push her a little bit.
I gotta be a big cousin to her on that one. I mean, come on. I'm sure she's just shy about it or something. But and Johnny, I mean, these guys, they gotta get. And John, the other thing I will say is that John Snee kept me laughing my entire childhood. He was offset. I mean, there were things that he would do that just like. He was the person that more film takes were ruined because literally he just was so funny as a human that he made you laugh like the kid in school that you just, no matter what, you would get in trouble because you couldn't stop laughing because that kid was around. And that was Johnny. I mean, he just, for me, he was the perfect little brother who kept me in stitches. He really did. Just a great kid, great family. The Snee family, they all had red hair. By the way, the entire family has red hair. They're just adorable. It's like a family of the dad, the mom, the kids. It's like the entire family has red hair. Just great. It's very, very blessed to have these people as second family. So I'll send quick notes around everybody, just letting them know it was a good experience.
Great. Give them my email, and
awesome.
we'd love to complete the circle, get everybody on.
Yeah, totally.
Great.
I get it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you.
Enjoy your night.
You too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Our thanks to Kipp Marcus for joining us over the last couple weeks here on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. Elizabeth, it's really good that you came back.
Thanks.
And it's nice to see you in person.
I'm excited to be here. I missed it.
We have a lot of stories that we're going to share with you next week. So be here. It's just going to be me and Elizabeth hanging out.
And of course, as always, if you have an idea, you can always get a hold of us at hello@fancounters.com.
I'm glad you didn't forget your job.
It's the only job I have.
You can join us on Facebook. Search Fan Counters on Facebook, or go to our private group, Sharpie Nation, also on the Facebook. Well, if you haven't given it up for Lent.
I didn't.
I didn't either. Because how could I promote the show?
Right.
All right. We'll see you next week, everybody.
See ya. Bye.